Call this meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome our board members and our residents here to our GLUA board meeting, April 18th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Chairman Dave Udy,
Here.
Eric Carlson,
Here.
Dave Hall,
Here.
Jerry McKenna,
Here.
Tom Metcalf is absent, but he is on the Zoom call. And I just want to relay to Tom, you're able to listen, but you have no voting authority today, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Bill Lamb,
Here.
Lisa Tolgetsky, here.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda from, what's the date?
April 18th.
Pardon me?
The date, April 18th.
Yeah, April 18th, yes, 2022. Is there a motion? Is there any additions to the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Hearing, okay. The motion, is there a second support?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and supported to approve the meeting agenda as presented. Is there any further board discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 7th, 2022,
As presented.
as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and supported to approve the meeting minutes from March 7th, 2022. Is there any further board discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Introduction of the Zoom attendees today. Who do we have online?
As far as I know, it's only Scott Hall from Fleece and Vanderbrink and Tom Metcalf.
Okay.
Oh, nope, there's Ian.
Ian, Scott,
Yeah.
good morning.
Morning.
You guys can hear us okay?
Yep.
We good? Okay, good. Under old business, I'd like to go over a summary of the efforts towards government funding that we've been addressing over the last several months. Dave, you want to comment on this, please?
Yeah, I can comment on that. We've had huge amounts, very many appointments with legislators, key legislators in Michigan to discuss the needs of our financial needs for this project. We wanted to make them aware of our needs, what we wanted. We are to potentially have them write in their laws and their legislation copy actual earmarks for Higgins Lake. That's where larger monies come from. And also, as all this money comes into Michigan, they're deciding where it goes and who gets it, and we want to make sure that they know about Higgins Lake and that we get our fair share of the money, or we hope all of the money for this project. So these are some of the legislators that we have talked to. Our U.S. Senators, Gary Peters. That was in February. We also had an aide come to us and we toured Higgins Lake. Debbie Stabenow, Senator Stabenow, that was early in January, where she is she's on the budget committee for the Congressional Budget Office. So we wanted to home in on her because she has some purse strings attachments. Our state senators, John Bumstead, he's the chair of DNR Eagle Appropriations Committee. We felt it was important we talk to the Appropriations Committee, those that are deciding who gets the money. So we've had two meetings with John Bumstead, one on February 16th and one on February 24th. Kurt Vanderwall, we've had 2 meetings with Kurt Vanderwall, one in January, end of January, and one at the end of February. He's involved in the he's on the Environmental Quality Committee. Jim Stamas, he's the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. And we've had meetings with him, that was in March. John Bison, Senator Bison, he's the vice chair of EAGLE and the DNR Appropriations Committee. EAGLE's the one that's going to be controlling the money as it comes down. We wanted to have conversations with them so they know about Higgins Lake. Our House reps, Daria Rendon, she's the Judiciary of Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreational Committee. We saw her in January 26th. Thomas Albert, Rep. Albert is the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, and he's the chair of the DNR Appropriations Committee. We've had great conversations with Thomas Albert. We did that in February. Annette Glenn is another representative. She's the chair of the EAGLE Appropriations Subcommittee, and she's also on the House Appropriations Committee. So we've been homing in on these people that are on these committees that control the money to make them understand about Higgins Lake. Also, Michelle Hoitenga, she's a representative in Michigan, and she's the vice chair of the House Appropriations Committee. And then there's Ken Borton, and Ken Borton is on the Appropriations Committee for Rural Development and Natural Resources. All of these people have been contacted, and all of them are in our court that want to help us and try to find buckets of money to help us pay for this so it doesn't burden our citizens. It's very important. It's a huge operation that we're doing here. I shouldn't say operation. It's a huge contact to be able to contact these people and talk to them. Right now, it's all happening. And we are working, the aides are working back and forth to try to put the language in these bills that say Higgins Lake and a certain amount of money. We also have contacted Stabenow's office and have a fiscal year 22, what's called a congressional direct spending request. These happen yearly, and towns ask for these congressional direct spending. They're just like an earmark of money that goes your way. We have requested $1.677 million in fiscal year 22 with Stabenow, and we filled out an application for Stabenow in fiscal year 23 for $1.677 million. And then also Peters, Senator Peters. The senators are the only ones that have these congressional directed spendings. So with Peters, we have requested for fiscal year 23, again, $1.67 million. So that's kind of an update on the funding. It seems, from my standpoint, exciting that everyone seems to be behind the program, that Higgins Lake needs to be cleaned up, our groundwater needs to be cleaned up, our drinking wells need to be cleaned up. And I'm happy to say that these folks are in our court, and time will tell later this year what kind of dollars come out of our efforts. So that's the report. Thank you. It's not easy, by the way. These Zoom meetings happen within an hour. Dave, Gary Peters wants to be on a Zoom meeting. Can you be available in an hour? Oh, Gary Peters can't meet you that hour. Can you be available 45 minutes from now? So it's difficult, and we're at their beck and call, but rightly so, because we need their help. So.
Board comments on that?
Just in a follow-up to what Dave said, I had the opportunity to meet with Senator Stamas's chief of staff in Lansing back in January, right after Senate Bill 565 was approved from the Senate to go to the House. That was a $4.3 billion infrastructure bill introduced and passed by the Senate and sent on to the House for approval. Asking how does this money actually get filtered down? There's not a solid single answer how it comes down, but the thoughts there were more than likely it's going to be funneled through EAGLE, through the State Water Clean Revolving Fund. And that is like our most likely pipeline where we may see some of these dollars coming in. Not that that's exclusively, but the majority of the major funding probably, again, probably will funnel through that channel.
One more thing I want to add to this, trying to get money for this project. People talk about grants. Well, you should have grant writers that write grants. So if you go Google grants and you look into grants, you'll see that grants come up with money that's around $25,000, $30,000, maybe $100,000, maybe $300,000. These are grant monies. But when you're looking at millions and millions and millions of dollars, you have to go beyond the grant money. And that's what Jerry's talking about, is these buckets of money that they're going to earmark for places, and that's where we're going to get them. One of the conversations we had with the Appropriations Committee when they asked us, we want to help you with this project, how much money do you need? Right now, how much do you need? And the number we told them was 60 million. They didn't flinch. They said, well, we have a request in right now for 50 million. Does that mean we'll get 60 million? I have no clue. I just want to communicate to folks about what we're doing and the conversations we're having and whether or not we're going to get money or not going to get money. Right now, we don't know how much we're going to get. But we do know we've had great conversations and it looks like we may be awarded a nice amount of money. We'll see. I will say this, and I know it's been around a lot, but if we don't get grant money, I can't see this project going forward. A lot of conversation about that. Why doesn't anybody say that? We're saying it right now. If this project doesn't get grant money, I doubt the townships will approve it. I think we all feel that way. So I think we should all be on the bus and we all should try to make this thing happen and try to work together to get the money so that we're not burdened with this thing and we can protect ourselves.
And I think going back to a point, Dave, you made a couple months ago back, that it's unlikely that we would go forward, you would go forward with this without the funding, the government, large government funding on there. And not to speak for everybody here, but my thoughts are exactly the same. We cannot burden the taxpayers with this full, whatever the total amount is. It has to have substantial government funding in order for it to happen. That's the role of government, is infrastructure. It needs to be a partnership between us and the government. Us alone, I don't see it happening.
Okay.
Tom, you have anything to add to that? Metcalf?
Oh, all sounds great. A lot of effort going on here.
Well, it's a tremendous amount of work that's been put into, getting appointments with these key people in the state senate and the state legislature. I know I've said it before, and I'll reiterate that's pretty much what we're doing now is trying to identify where the buckets of money are out there and where we could possibly get some significant grant funding. So I think we've talked about this issue enough. We're working very, very hard, very diligently, and we have allies in the legislature that want to help us. They understand the problem. What's interesting is, thank you. What's interesting is many of the state legislators or state senators, they have cottages on Small Lake in northern Michigan, and they're experiencing the same problems we do. They said, well, we understand what you're going through because we have the same problem in our lake. So, just wanted to give you an update on that.
Just real quick, for those of you who didn't get the handouts when you came in, because we ran out of them, we just got more copies, so if you'd like those handouts, they are available now.
Take one of those, pass it on if you would. Moving on to old business, vacant buildable properties. I think I want to bring this on the table again, and I know that some of the board members had some opinions about that, vacant buildable properties. When we're talking about vacant buildable, is that what are we going to assess vacant buildables, and how much are we going to assess them? How much we're going to assess them, we can't get into today because we need our municipal advisors with us in that discussion. But I've had several people come to me and tell me, citizens, that vacant buildable properties probably need to be assessed something. Because if the sewer pipe, if the main sewer trunk is running down that road, that does add some valuable value to a vacant buildable property. And I know there's been some discussion also that this is going back several months, that there's a possibility that we would not assess any vacant buildable properties. So I want to have a brief discussion about that today, and then I know we're not going to solve that today, but I want to get it back out on the table so that any board member that has a comment on that, one way or the other, now's the time to make it, and we'll bring it up at a later date.
My thoughts as far as vacant buildable properties, I think that there needs to be some form of assessment. I don't agree with the proposed amount of assessment on a vacant buildable property as put forward here. I think there needs to be a compromise somewhere in the middle. Like you said, David, does add value to the property, but at the same time, it's creating a burden on citizens as well, that may or may not ever get built upon.
Sure.
Just my opinion.
I agree with Jerry on the amount of money that was first put out with that on the vacant lots. I did some research to try to find out does a sewer increase the value of property? And I found some reports that one had to do with structured lots, and the value increased was between 8 and 12%. But on vacant lots, the value increase was 25%. And I said, wow, how could but I guess that's true. You have a vacant lot with nothing on it, and a sewer goes through, what's the increased value? In this particular report, they did some studies, and it was 25%. I thought that was a lot, but the whole point is the sewer does involve value to the property, and the question is how much. And I'm with Jerry that the number we threw out to begin with, or that was given to us, seemed to be pretty high and not doable in a lot of areas.
Eric?
I'd have to agree. That was one of the things from the very start that we looked at, or that we had questions on, and people ask, it's not fair if the lot's only worth $10,000, you can't charge them $14,000. I kind of would like to see it as low as absolutely possible, because some of these are very small, some won't be, and there's going to be a blend of things. Some people roll up the ones into one property. Shouldn't have to do that unless that's works for the family or the homeowner. But if it runs by the front, someday somebody's going to build it.
More than likely.
We don't own these things forever. Generations come and go, but the fact that you have that there is a big benefit. And then when you build your house, you can catch up on the expense of the sewer system at the time that they develop. But if you were to buy your septic tank when you develop and build your house, those numbers are going to inflate over time. If it's, for example, $10,000 today, it could be double or triple that in 10, 20 years or 30 years when the kids want to build a house. So when it comes time for the next generation to build on those properties, the service will already be provided. The property owner will have paid some portion of the expense for building the plant and the main lines, and then they can catch up with the tank and stuff later. Seems like a fair way to go.
Bill?
I agree. I mean, I'd like to see it almost close to zero, to be honest with you. I just think that once they develop the land at that point in time, then they will opt in at that point and pay their fair share. So I'd like to see it as close to zero as possible.
Just to add on to that, I think the one thing we have to keep in mind, though, is that taking the buildable vacant lots, or taking the vacant lots out of the equation, does increase the, the overhead of the system itself, because it's spread out over fewer properties. At the same time, I think it's the fair and right thing to do, is to minimize it as much as possible.
Tom Metcalf?
I'm in agreement with Bill. I don't think that vacant land should be charged. It used to be zero or very close to zero. Some of this property will never be developed. It's going to be in families forever, and some people it's attached to their existing homes. I think that as time goes by, and if that property ever becomes developed, I think it should be assessed at that point. It's just my feeling. To make it fair, you can't charge what we originally proposed, or the engineers did, $10,000 or $12,000 for a lot that at this point is not even worth that. That's not even right to even think that way. So, it's my feeling. I think as close to zero as possible.
Anyone else?
I agree.
Yeah.
Are we gonna talk about the map? I mean, besides the vacant properties?
No.
No. Okay, I'll move on. The North State Park meeting update. We had another Zoom meeting with the representatives from the North State Park. We've actually had 2 Zoom calls with them. Just so the public knows, the South State Park is already hooked into the Houghton Lake Utility Authority. So they're already hooked in. The North State Park is not. They have their own treatment site, and their treatment site is aged, and they're looking at probably investing a significant amount of money to update their site, their treatment site at the North Park. So we've had 2 conversations with them, and as anything with the DNR, we talk with the local folks, and then they run it downstate to their home office. And right now, I believe their comment was, at least snapshot in time right now, they did not budget any monies for hooking into our system, should it go forward right now. That's not to say that they wouldn't do it in the future, but a snapshot in time, I think that's the message we got.
I'd like to add to that. I was on that Zoom call with the North State Park, and they had many DNR folks on that, and they don't want to be in the wastewater business. They don't want to be there. They would love to get involved with us. They've asked us to rehash our numbers and make sure they're right, because they can't go to Lansing a second time. They can go the first time and say, this is how much money we need to hook up to the system, and they want to make sure that number is right, and that's encouraging. So they have infrastructure. They've spent a lot of money. They told us the North State Park has spent $300,000 on their own infrastructure to handle their waste. And they're a little frustrated, and they would like help. So I think it may work out, and that would also include the McMullen Center, and then we would work on the camp as well, Camp Westminster, because they're all 3, in a sense, DNR properties. So that's very encouraging, very encouraging. It was a good meeting.
Dave, do you know if they're in immediate need of an upgrade on their facilities right now, or is it workable?
They can limp along just like they're doing. They just don't like it.
How old is it?
I don't know.
System?
It's up in the 20 years or more. And it's from what I heard, it's reached its life expectancy, but isn't,
That's what I
but
was,
is still functioning.
right.
So it's time for that.
So we're going to continue talking with them. In the future, we'll keep it. Josh Pillow is the lead gentleman at the state parks, but we said we'd keep in touch with them, and we'll have meetings with them ongoing. Probably every month we'll check in with them, see if there's anything new that they'd like to bring us back in. So the question's been asked several times by residents, what about the North State Park or the South State Park? So South State Park's already hooked into Houghton Lake, and we are talking with the North State Park about becoming a partner with us in that process. Anything else under old business that somebody'd like to bring up? Did I miss anything? All right, let's move on to new business. Authorization to sign the application for the wastewater treatment plant site. Everybody's got one of the applications out there. What this is, it's an application for the land transaction purchase. We're not actually purchasing the land, we're just putting in the application to purchase it. And to do that, I, as the chairman, need to sign it. We're gonna check a couple of boxes on page 2, and we're going to submit this application for purchase. It's just part of the process. It's just one step at a time.
Do we know a dollar amount yet?
We don't, they have not told us what the dollar amount is yet.
This is a long process. You fill out the application, it's like ringing the doorbell. And they answer the door, and they say, can we help you?
Yeah.
And we say, we're interested in this property. Oh, okay. And it goes to a whole committee, and they look at it, and they appraise it, so it's a long process. Sometimes can take 6 months, 8 months in order for it to happen. So it's the beginning of a long road of working on this particular property. Samples, bore samples have to be done. We have to show them exactly where the plant's gonna be, where the infiltration basins are. We have to drill down to show what kind of percolation's happening at those actual areas. Endangered species, whether or not a bird's gonna come in and have their nest, and we have all these things to do, and a lot of that has gone on, and that's all this process. But this is the official form that has to be signed to get it going.
Has anything changed geographically as far as what was latest agreed upon area?
No, same location. Same location.
So it says a payment of $300 has to be accompanied by this application.
Yes, we'll have to share
That's
that with,
correct.
we'll share that with Lyon Township.
And then just because you fill out the application doesn't mean you're going to
No, it
purchase.
doesn't mean that-
It's just the original,
It's
the
just-
process.
It just starts the process. I mean, if they came back and they said, well, we want the, $100,000 an acre, well, whoa. Oh, we're not gonna do that. It's just part of the DNR process. Is there any question about that?
No.
I'll now entertain a motion to allow Chairman Dave Udy to sign the application for the wastewater treatment plant property.
I make a motion to authorization to sign the application.
Is there support?
Second?
Motion's been made and supported. Is there any further board discussion on this motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Chairman Dave Udy,
Aye.
Eric Carlson,
Aye.
Dave Hall,
Aye.
Jerry McKenna,
Aye.
Tom Metcalf absent, Bill Lamb,
Aye.
Lisa Tolgatsky. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I'll now entertain a motion to publish a notice in the Houghton Lake Resorter of the upcoming Clean Water State Revolving Fund public meeting. This is only an application. It's not the official document. It's just part of the process. And it's just part of the application process. That's all it is.
So this would be running for 2 weeks.
That's right. The notice in the paper will be running for 2 consecutive weeks in the Houghton Lake Resorter.
So a motion to publish a 2-week notice
Yes.
in the Whole Lake Resort for
Yes.
the upcoming Clean Water SRF
Yes.
public meeting.
Yes. First publication will be in this Thursday's paper.
And this is just a notification of a public meeting,
That's all
basically,
it
for
is.
the application.
That's all it is.
I thought it only had to be placed once.
No, it has to be placed twice,
I'm not sure.
2 consecutively.
We'll have to double check that.
All right, so I'm just going to put down a notice. Okay.
Yeah.
But it does have to be placed by the 21st of this Thursday's paper, has to have
Right.
that notice in there.
Right.
So just a motion to publish the notice in the Whole Lake Resort of the upcoming Clean Water SRF public meeting. Okay.
Is there any further board discussion on this motion?
Yeah, the discussion is, why are we having a public meeting on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund?
Yeah.
And it's part of the application process. So to apply to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and to get any money from them, you have to fill out the application. And the application requires a public meeting in which a stenographer records what went on in the meeting, and that gets attached to the application. And now you officially have an application in there that allows them to move forward to determine the amount of money and how their program's going to go. So it's important that we have the meeting. It's an application meeting. It's not a meeting where we, beat each other up back and forth. It's a meeting that we need to have to apply to see if we'll get money. So that's the reason for this particular meeting. It's an application meeting.
Another key reason why we have to go through this step is we're all searching for grant money, all right? In order to be awarded grant money, you have to have a program. So we have to make the application for the program in order to be considered for the grant money. That's all part of the process. It doesn't mean that we're going to, the board's going to vote to approve to move ahead with anything at this time. It's just an application, that's all it is. But because it's an application, because we have to follow the guidelines of Clean Water SRF, we have to go through this process, notification. I have to hold a public hearing. Like Dave said, there'll be a stenographer there to record comments from the public, and that will all be made, that will all be a part of the public notice in the newspaper. Is there any further board discussion on this motion?
No?
Who made it? Who made it?
Oh, I'll now entertain a motion that we publish the 2-week notice in the Whole Lake Resorter.
Just do a notice,
Yeah, just a notice, that's it.
not 2 weeks. We'll just say a motion to publish a notice in the Holton Lake Resorter in the upcoming Clean Water SRF public meeting.
Yes. Is there a motion?
I motion.
All right, is there support?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made in support to publish the notice in the Holton Lake Resorter for the upcoming SRF meeting. Is there any further board discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same? Thank you. Motion carries. Third item I want to discuss today is I want to entertain a motion to add Jim Barnwell as an advisor to the GLUA board. Jim is a resident in the township, and he's come to us several times to want to enter into the discussion. Jim brings a career of engineering of sewer and septic systems to our GLUA board. He wouldn't be a voting member, but I want to add Jim as an advisor to the GLUA board. And Jim, you're here today. I saw you come in. He's the gentleman in the orange top there, orange fleece top there. Jim's been at several of our meetings, and like I say, he's come into my office several times to have discussions, personal discussions about what the GLUA board is doing and what our project is. So I will make the motion to add Jim Barnwell as an advisor to the GLUA board. Is there support?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion's been made and supported to add Jim Barnwell as an advisor to the GLUA board. Is there any further board discussion on this motion?
Yes. I'd like to point out that Jim's experience and background is that he worked on the Markey and Houghton Lake sewer system as an engineer and brings to us a lot of experience. I personally have never worked on a sewer system. Did I ever know what it is? I know I have a septic and I have a pump and I have some stuff. But we need people who actually know what a sewer does, and Jim brings that experience to us, and we're very thankful that he's willing to volunteer his time. That's my comment.
There you go. Any other board discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, now we have a guest speaker with us this morning, is John Lindsay. He's from Milan Supply, and he's here we've had several questions from the public asking, what are some of the alternatives to septic systems? And Ron brings a lifetime of experience in that regard. Come on up, Ron.
You never know who you meet in these meetings. Jim and I actually worked on a number of projects together in the
There you
past,
go.
and
There you go.
we're neighbors. Are you living up here now?
Yeah.
Got some handouts
Yeah,
here.
yeah, here, I'll pass them up.
Okay.
I'll let some of them.
Where would you like me to?
Right here.
Okay. I'll block these guys on the TV here.
Nope, they're fine.
Good morning. So my name's Ron Lindsay with a company called Milan Supply, or the technical division is Milan Engineered Systems. So I'm actually an environmental geologist, and so I'm their onboard consultant. And so for 10 years, I was chasing chemical contamination plumes in the groundwater, remediation industry, chemical industry. And for the past 26 years, been working in the decentralized advanced treatment systems of septic, and including collection systems and so forth. So I want to talk a little bit about, when we talked about, the board was interested in learning a little bit about some alternative treatment systems that are available out there. So about 26 years ago, when I was hired in, the word alternative treatment systems pretty much didn't exist in Michigan, and the company kind of spearheaded that throughout the state. So there is in fact now thousands of alternative treatment systems installed throughout the state. Most of them are primarily installed around the bigger cities. A lot of them are applied in situations where we can't get a septic perk, and we can't put in a conventional type system. So if we put in a engineered type system, we can essentially do the same thing our soil body is doing in a box, basically a mini wastewater treatment plant located at the home. And with that degree of treatment, we can apply that in marginal sites. For instance, around Detroit metro area, hundreds, actually thousands of them located around there. Because we built up on all the good conventional sites where we put in a conventional septic system. And so now we have clay soils, which would normally be an unbuildable lot. But if we pre-treat that, if we properly design that soil dispersal area, we can put that into limiting conditions such as clay loam soils and so forth. So it's not a new technology, been around for a long time. So normally I have a nice presentation on all this, but due to the lack of time frame, I could not get anything. So I kind of copied some key slides, and we'll spend a few seconds on each one of those. So on the very first one, we really have to we'll go through about a 5-second rundown of a conventional wastewater treatment or a septic system. So whether it's an alternative system or conventional system, what's the common denominator? It's septic tanks. Yes,
Can
sir.
you get a few more of those handouts back here?
Do you have any more handouts?
Yeah, they're black and white, but I think they'll.
Bring that back. So the common denominator in all these systems is a septic tank. And it's real critical that the septic tank, whether it's on your conventional septic system or an alternative system, it has to be watertight. We have infiltration or exfiltration coming in, our system is going to be jeopardized in one degree or another. So that's a common denominator. So, a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to the septic tank because it's so common. You don't put a lot of emphasis on it, but it is a critical part of that treatment system, no matter what the treatment system. In fact, anywhere, depending on what parameter we're looking at, anywhere from 40 to 80% of our treatment occurs in that septic tank. So not only does it do settling and flotation properties there, but there's a lot of biochemical reactions and so forth with the various parameters in the waste stream to treat that. So real critical that we have a good septic system. So once you get into the soil body on a conventional type system, you look at that top slide there, there's kind of a bowl up to the sand drains that are underneath the drain field. Well, we have a tremendous amount of biology in the shallow soil profile. And we have a lot of biofilms that develop on the soil particles and so forth. But the key to treatment, whether it is a conventional system or one of the alternative systems that we'll be talking about here in a minute, is oxygen. Those bugs need oxygen. Now in a septic tank, that's an anaerobic digestion system. So there's lack of oxygen in that system. And the waste comes in, it comes from our gut. So we enter it into that system, anaerobic. And let me kind of back up a little bit too regarding treatment. We want to keep, if you go away with anything regarding conventional septic systems, is every time you flush a toilet, from your gut, you're putting in the bacteria that are needed to do the treatment in that system. So, there's been a lot of studies on additives. Everybody thinks, oh, okay, go to the corner hardware store, put some additives in there, and that's gonna help my system. Most studies have proved that those don't do any good. In fact, there are some that actually can do some harm. So again, the best bet is avoid those additives, and just remember when you flush that toilet, you're putting in the necessary bacteria. So once we go through the soil, on the bottom slide there is a drawing of a trench system, or it could be a bed system. Again, the yellow in there indicates we need a lot of oxygen going in. And if you see underneath that box that depicts the drain field, that's kind of a blow up of the sand grain. So we have the biofilms growing on that. And as the wastewater infiltrates through that trench into the soil, the wastewater goes over the sand grains, and those biofilms absorb that, and the bacteria that are growing on those biofilms degrade the wastewater. In fact, most of the treatment occurs within probably 6 inches after the gravel in your conventional system. Then the rest of it, most sanitary codes require what? 4-foot isolation from the bottom of trench or bed to our water table or other site limiting factor. And that's just to provide some additional buffer and so forth in there, make sure we have protection. Because if we saturate those soils, those bugs can't get the oxygen. And another thing is when we saturate the soil, the bacteria need contact time to do their job. If we saturate the soil, it goes through that soil column too fast, and they don't have enough contact time to do the degradation that we need for that wastewater. So if we don't have, so on the next page, if we don't have appropriate soil conditions to do our wastewater in conventional means, we can apply alternative treatment systems. And essentially what we're doing is putting in a little mini wastewater treatment plant at the house. And what comes out of it, if everything's performing well, it looks like bottled water. But you have to be aware there's a lot of pathogens still in there. There's still our nutrient loading that's in there, nitrogen, phosphorus. And so we would need additional steps to take care of those parameters. We're looking at that. So third page is a unit process. And this is a typical wastewater treatment plant. Is essentially the same thing that we're doing on site. So what says primary sedimentation, that's our primary septic tank. We're doing our primary treatment in that tank. And then in a municipal plant, there's typically some type of an aeration type treatment device. And oftentimes we're injecting air into that water. The bugs are kind of free floating. They have food. They got a nice healthy environment. As soon as that wastewater comes in, they start digesting that. But there's so many bugs in there, so when we pass through there, you have what's called a final sedimentation or a clarifier. And we have to settle out all those bugs that we've been trying to grow in there, because there's just so many of them, we can't release those out into the environment. Otherwise, we're going to have problems out there, and we're not going to be able to maintain the population of bugs in that treatment train that we need as more sewage is coming in. So we actually recycle a lot of the bacteria as it settles out of the clarifier. What's leaving is clean looking water. And then we actually take some of that, the bacteria, and send it back into the start of that treatment train to make sure that we get a sufficient population of bugs to do our job. Then further downstream, we can do some additional treatment if we need to deal with nutrient loads. For instance, phosphorus, we can add in some kind of a phosphorus treatment system. So essentially, we're duplicating the same thing. So when it comes to the residential alternative treatment systems, they fall under two categories: aerobic treatment units and packed bed filters. So aerobic treatment units, actually they're both aerobic treatment units. So when somebody's talking to me and they mention, well, I got this aerobic treatment unit at my house, it's like, well, okay, what kind is it? Is it the bubble machine or is it the packed filters? Like, because they're both aerobic. They rely on oxygen to do the treatment, just like your conventional drain field does. So an aerobic, what we normally call an aerobic treatment unit, operates in a saturated mode. Essentially, we have some kind of a tank or vessel and we're injecting oxygen into that. And we give the bugs the air that they need, and then we have the wastewater flowing in, they have the food, they have a nice healthy environment, and they do a good job of degrading the waste. Packed filter is another aerobic system, but it operates in an unsaturated mode. So we have a box with some type of a media for the bacteria to grow on, and we just kind of send a little bit of a dose on top of it, let it trickle through in an unsaturated mode so the bacteria have a lot of contact time with the wastewater. And by the time it goes through that media, we have clean effluent. Again, except for when we're dealing with nutrient loading, we have to add some additional steps. So the next page there kind of shows the kind of a stereotypical setup at a residential home. And the aerobic treatment units are called suspended growth or activated sludge reactors or fixed film extended duration. Go by various names depending on the configuration and the manufacturers and so forth. So again, we would have a septic tank preceding that unit. You would have that vessel where we're growing the bacteria, and wastewater's coming in, we have some kind of a means to inject oxygen in that system. If you were to look at that, we call that the mixed liquor. If you were to look at that, it kind of looks like chocolate milk. It's just in it, and it's just bubbling away in there. So the bugs are kind of free-floating. And then you see at the tail end of that tank, they have a clarifier. Again, a means to separate all those bacteria that we've been trying to grow in there. We want those to kind of go back in there. Now, over a certain time frame, those bacteria get old and we have to pump that tank out. And there's ways that an operator can measure when that is needed and kind of restart the population of bugs. So again, there's probably about 40 different manufacturers that make aerobic treatment units and various means of discharging or injecting oxygen into that system. Blowers, linear compressors, and so forth. So number of means. So next page is we can even in some of the bigger plants for that clarifier. Bigger plants we're utilizing membrane technology. So again, we're kind of bubbling all that wastewater, getting our treatment, and instead of physically settling out the bacteria, we have a membrane. Kind of think of it like a reverse osmosis type of a membrane. And so nothing is going to pass through there except for dissolved minerals or nutrients and so forth. And so provides ultra filtration. So again, that has now been developed for residential level, but it is expensive. We'll talk price here. Everybody wants to know price and so forth. It is expensive. The membranes, they have a life expectancy of anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and you have to replace it. Twice a year, you have to clean the membrane. So very maintenance expensive. Where these are used are in situations, for instance, down in Ohio. Residential systems oftentimes are just discharged into the ditch, believe it or not. So go down to Ohio, you don't want to go near the ditches. And they do that under an NPDES permit. Very limited, they're more concerned with ammonia going in the surface water. That's toxic to organisms in surface water and so forth. And so when we need immediate, and we're very limited as far as what parameters we're looking for, when we get ultra purified wastewater. So packed bed filter is the unsaturated mode of treatment. Again, as you can see in that one picture there, it's actually sheets of media, kind of looks like felt in this particular manufacturer's setup. And just small doses. The brown that you see on that is actually biomass or bacteria that's growing. And so as that wastewater, we just give those bugs a little bit of food, trickles through, and in the meantime, they're still hungry. So they start kind of cannibalizing on each other. And they keep those bug populations in sync. So unlike that aeration type system where we have a lot of bugs and we need a lot of bugs and we settle them out, we don't want that in a tactile filter because that will clog up the media. So we just kind of give the bugs a little bit of food and make them start eating dead cell mass and so forth to keep the biology in check. So next picture would be this is an actual design, just kind of a copy of a system. It's actually going in Leelanau County, probably here in the next several weeks. So as you can see on here, you're coming out of the house, I kind of labeled everything in red if you have a colored copy there. So first of all, we have a septic tank, and then the darker box, the second box in that series is a packed bed filter of a particular manufacturer. And then following that is another tank with a phosphorus reducing technology. And then following that is a tank that doses to the low pressure distribution drain field and kind of keep things nice and shallow because we still want oxygen to that drain field and so forth. So as you can see on there, we have a number of steps in this particular design here. And we'll talk about the nutrients next, which would be the nitrogen and the phosphorus. So on this particular application, that second box there, you see a little red line going back to the first tank. So that is to reduce our nitrogen loading to the system. So in an aeration system, we convert, coming out of the septic tank is ammonia or ammonium. And once we get into an oxygenated zone, that gets converted to nitrate. And that's what we're concerned about in our drinking water supply, or groundwater supply and so forth. And so we have nitrate that's very mobile in the environment. But if we take that nitrate and we put it into an anaerobic or a zone of low oxygen, and a zone that has food to support the bacteria, they'll strip the oxygen off of that nitrate and convert that to nitrogen gas, which is what 72% of what we breathe. So real simple process. And by doing that, we get, probably depending on there's a lot of dialing in that's involved, and we can get anywhere from 50 to 75, 80% reduction in total nitrogen going out to the system. So on this one, again, there's a separate unit on phosphorus, and we'll talk about that shortly. So next page is just a little blurb on nitrogen. So we do get a little bit removed in the septic tank. There's biomass settling in the tank and so forth. And a tank, the nitrogen is in the form of ammonia and ammonium. In the soil, as we indicated, or in the aeration system, an advanced treatment system, we can convert that to nitrate. And then, as we talked about the, now, one thing I want to back up on nitrate, those are a very particular strain of bacteria that are very slow growers and are extremely sensitive. So they're extremely sensitive to temperatures, to pH, the amount of oxygen, any type of toxicity. So if somebody's on chemotherapy, heavy antibiotics, or somebody does a lot of excess cleaning, sending a lot of cleaning compounds on there, we're never going to develop those nitrifying bacteria. And so they're very sensitive, so we really got to watch them. So again, once we put them into another process called denitrification, again, an area of low oxygen and food, we can convert that to nitrogen gas. So, and so the last part on here is what I just mentioned. They're very sensitive, especially the bacteria that nitrify, that convert it to nitrate. So let's get into phosphorus reduction real quick here. It's kind of interesting, you look at phosphorus reduction, some parts of the world are way ahead of us. Get over into Sweden, and they have what's called separation toilets. So a high percentage of the phosphorus is contained in urine, and so they have urine separation toilets. So obviously here in the U.S., we really have to redo all our plumbing and so forth to do that. But what they do is they collect the urine that has the highest percentage of phosphorus. Goes into a holding tank, and periodically somebody comes and collects it. There's a little milk run and collects the urine in the neighborhood. And they essentially ferment it in tanks and raise the pH, kill any pathogens, and they use it as fertilizer. So kind of interesting concept. So again, in a septic tank, we lose a little bit of it due to the biomass settling and so forth in there. Once we get into the soil, if we have soils, for instance, I mentioned a lot of development around, say, Detroit area, Grand Rapids, where we have a lot of clay soils. You know, and everybody thinks clay soil is the worst for septic systems. It's the worst for getting the wastewater away. You know, clay, it's hard to get water to move through it. But treatment aspect is actually the best thing that we can have. Clay particles have a lot of iron, they have a lot of aluminum, calcium, other minerals, and when the phosphorus makes contact with them, if it has sufficient contact time, it's going to bind with that phosphorus and hold it in the soil. Now, all those binding spots, eventually they'll be taken up, and at some point there's going to be breakthrough, and then it will start traveling. But clay soils are great for that. So treatment in the soil really depends on our mineralogy in the soil, how much aeration zone that we have. You know, we don't want to be right in the water table, otherwise we're not going to achieve that. So phosphorus in a water management scenario like you are dealing with here at Higgins Lake is a challenge. Just because that technology at the on-site level really hasn't been, there's nothing out there that's been sustainable very long term. So a couple of the treatment processes that are used now, primarily here in Michigan, is if you get into Leland or Benzie County area, they got a handful of these, is we're injecting the metallic salt, alum, into that waste stream, and it precipitates it out. And so that example design that I just indicated, that we just went through, that phosphorus reducing tank on that one is actually a tank. They're going to have a riser next to that tank, and they're going to have a bucket of alum, and they're going to have a little peristaltic pump that tiny doses alum into that tank, and it precipitates out the phosphorus. Does a pretty good job. It takes a little bit of dialing in, you know, to try to figure out what is the right concentration based on the homeowner's usage. So every site is going to have to be individually tweaked. And typically a 5-gallon bucket of alum, typical residence, will probably last about 6 months. And then it's going to have to be replenished. So about every 6 months, we're going to have to replenish that alum injection. There has been a number of manufacturers been kind of playing around with sorptive medias, basically man-made medias or natural medias like slag from the steel mills and so forth, and you know, something with iron, aluminum, calcium, so that if we dump that wastewater onto that media, it will absorb that phosphorus. It will bind that phosphorus up. So what the problem is, the company I work for, we don't have anything that we market for that. We've dealt with a handful of different technologies, specifically over in Benzie, Leland area, and we haven't found anything sustainable enough that'll last very long term. There's really nothing that has a very long track record, you know, 20, 25 years and so forth. So some of them that we had following problems and so forth, and been abandoned and kind of went back to the alum method. But there are some manufacturers that do have the sort of media. But once those bonding sites have all been taken up on the media, you're going to get breakthrough of phosphorus, and you're going to have to replace that media. So, and some of the media is kind of loosely put into tanks. The question is, what do we do with that media? Will landfill take it and so forth? So a lot of questions on that. Parts of Canada, they're using electrochemistry. They're actually putting in a sacrificial anoid where we're dissolving iron in that waste stream. And again, the iron is gonna bond with that phosphorus and precipitate it out. So that's, again, an add-on type system. So near the end here, so advanced treatment system operational concerns that we might have. So the problem that I foresee, again, I've got 26 years experience with alternative treatment systems. And the problems that I see are in seasonal applications like this. So you leave your cottage for the winter, that system's gonna have to go through a startup phase. And right away, we can remove the organics and so forth. The nitrogen, because those nitrifying bacteria are very slow growers. You start up that system in April. Depending on the system, that startup phase could be within a couple days to 2-3 weeks. But with the nitrogen, it's gonna be extended further out. You may not see nitrogen reduction, you started in April, till the temperature's warmed up and so forth, maybe at the end of May. So if you were to sample that, you might be out of compliance of any type of a discharge standard that would have to be established in a scenario like this. And another aspect is the weekend usage being seasonal is if the system is used to operating on 2 people at the home, but on the weekends your family members come up and you have 10, 12, 15 people enjoying the lake and so forth, and all of a sudden you're going to get huge surge flows going through that system. Whereas in an aeration type system, depending on how it's designed, you can actually push all that bacteria out that you've been relying on to do your wastewater treatment. So as a result, your organic concentrations could go up possibly. If you have a alum injection type system for phosphorus removal, you have a big surge coming in, you can bypass the contact time that's needed, or the amount of chemical that you're injecting in there isn't going to be sufficient, and you could exceed any kind of discharge standards. So those scenarios are kind of a concern for me regarding treatment performance on a system. So high flow fluctuations, you can kind of go through this. Now engineering-wise, we can compensate for that. Following the septic tank, or depending on what the design is, but typically the septic tank, we can put what's called a flow equalization or a surge tank, which is basically if you got a big surge coming in, it holds it into that tank. And it time doses it out into the treatment unit or the soil on a pre-programmed dosage. So you're kind of spoon feeding the bacteria, but you're holding back those big surge flows so you optimize any treatment performance. But that's going to come with a cost. You're probably looking at another $5,000 for a pump tank, a time dose pump tank, preceding any type of a treatment system. So when it comes to the soil dispersal system, again, we like to keep everything shallow, up high in the aerated zone of the soil. So pressure distribution of some sort would be optimal in that, or even drip irrigation into that. Especially if you get up into the soil, into the topsoil, we have some mineralogy in there that can bind up some of the phosphorus and so forth. If some of it did, get out during a peak event and bypass the treatment thing. So last page here is consideration for. You want to consider that for your community. Just a few things that you need to be aware of is treatment standards are going to have to be established by somebody, typically regulatory agencies, for the organics that are going out, suspended solids, nutrient loading that is expected. Michigan usually looks at out of the pipe. They usually don't care because you do get additional treatment in that soil. But typically the state of Michigan doesn't recognize that aspect of it. They want to see what is that effluent quality of a certain parameter coming out at the end of the pipe before it goes into the soil. So some kind of standards will have to be selected. So every site is going to have a site characterization. So just like the conventional system, we need to determine, are we in regulatory compliance of isolations to the water well, into the property lines, to the building and so forth? Do we have vertical separation? Usually, because I mentioned in the beginning, conventional systems, we normally have 4 foot of isolation from bottom of gravel in the drain field to our limiting factor. We pre-treat this, we don't need all that safety factor in there, so we can bring that down a little bit. So perhaps 2 foot of isolation. So we'd have to evaluate what the soil and groundwater conditions are at every site, and every site would have to be uniquely designed based on the site characterization. And the system's gonna have to be carefully designed by an engineer that's been trained by a particular manufacturer of whatever technology is chosen for that site. It's gonna have to be installed by a authorized installer that's familiar with all the little bells and whistles and the tweaking that's necessary of installing an alternative type treatment system. All manufacturers provide training to those installers. So, and then standards are gonna have to develop regarding the operation and maintenance of that particular system. What is the interval? On something like this, when we're dealing with nutrient reduction, that system at minimum is gonna have to be looked at twice a year when we're dealing with nutrient reduction. We're gonna have to have compliance monitoring, to make sure that we're meeting those discharge standards, whatever those might be established as. So what is so that means we're gonna have to sample to make sure that we're in regulatory compliance. We're also gonna have to sample as the operators trying to tweak that system in, especially with phosphorus and nitrogen reduction and so forth. So some additional sampling would have to be required. And then what is the enforcement? So should we be out of compliance, what are we gonna do? What's the operator gonna do? Who's he gonna report to? Who's gonna make sure that the system is properly getting looked at to get us back into compliance of that system? So down in some of the states where I personally maintain systems myself too, and in a lot of the areas where I maintain them, fortunately, I don't have to, we're mostly in clay soils there, so we're not worried about a lot of nutrient reduction and transport of nutrients. But the thing is, an alternative type system, if it's not maintained minimally, there's a lot of bells and whistles on these things. Or components, I should say. There is pumps, there's aerators on the aeration type systems. You could have multiple pumps on the site. So it needs to be looked at. And if not, that system could pose problems. It could pose a public and environmental health problems. So a lot of regulatory agencies in the beginning years, when I first got into this and we started advanced treatment systems in Michigan, most regulatory agencies would require, okay, that homeowner has to verify that you have a contract good for 5 years. So what would happen is if there's no problems going on, and that homeowner is paying this operator $300-400 a year to come in once a year to tweak things and make sure everything's working right, that homeowner's gonna say, after 5 years, I'm on my own, I can't, regulatory laws. And then we start seeing problems, because when something happens, it kind of snowball effects, throughout the whole treatment train. So regulatory agencies in a large part of the state have recognized or are recognizing that aspect. So what some of the regulatory agencies are doing, for example, down in Washtenaw County, Oakland County, Livingston County, they have operating type permit systems. So if you have an alternative treatment system, I'll use Washtenaw County as an example. They have a 5-year operating permit that every 5 years you as a homeowner have to renew. It's real easy to renew. You just have to have a authorized service provider on an annual basis submit a report to the county that indicated that yes, and the county has their own specific monitoring and maintenance report form that service provider has to complete. And they submit that form, and if everything looks good, After 5 years, you come in, you pay their appropriate fee, of course, there's always a fee, and you're good for another 5 years, but you have to maintain that system with a county authorized service provider. Now, if there is a glitch in the system, somehow, something, just performance-wise isn't working right, that operator is going to indicate that on a report, and then the health department is going to send a letter to the homeowner that, hey, we recognize there's a problem, you need to fix it, please send documentation that it's been corrected. And then there is enforcement action. They have had, I think it was about 2-3 years ago, they took about 5 homeowners to court because they didn't want, to agree with the compliance issues that were going on and so forth. So with that, do you have any questions or kind of, normally something like this, it would take me 6 hours to go through all this. I just kind of.
How much does it cost?
So,
How much-
cost?
Cost of,
So cost,
cost of simple aeration,
yeah,
and because you explained not just aeration, but, a huge, multiple tanks and da-da-da, it seemed like it was a large advanced.
Yeah.
So how much is just a simple aeration or the advanced ones?
okay,
Both.
so if we look at an advanced system, most of the systems that I personally maintain, again, we don't have to deal with nutrient reduction. Sometimes we've got to deal with nitrogen, where we kind of recirculate back to that primary tank. That's really not an issue though. So install costs on that, so it would be the same footprint that you saw on that design minus that phosphorus unit. So if it was an aeration system, I'm talking treatment technology in general. There's, again, a lot of manufacturers and price ranges all over. But an installed cost, which includes what that installing contractor would charge you for everything, from connecting to the house, all the tanks, the drain field. The big variable is the drain field cost, depending on how far it is, how high of isolation, the horizontal extent of the drain field. But in general, a aeration type system is probably starting at about, 17,000 all the way up into the mid-40s for an install cost. The packed bed filters are generally higher cost than that. Typically, you're at about $5,000 to $6,000 more, the capital cost on something like that installed. So the install cost on a packed bed filter, generally starting, I usually reference when somebody has costs, I'll say packed bed filter is going to start at $25,000 on up. So again, the on up cost is really dependent on a lot of the site factors. I just did a startup 2 weeks ago down in Oakland County on a site that was on a bluff. And a lot of that work had to be hand done. They actually had to have somebody come in and order in some coils to hold back a retaining wall on this bluff. So very expensive. And that installation was $75,000 for that system. So it all depends. So in general, a packed bed filter, generally I'll say it ranges from $25,000 to $45,000. Aerobic treatment unit, much less initially, probably that 17, 18,000 on up. Maintenance cost on a system like this, typically without nutrient reduction and a one-time visit per year, which you can get by with on some of the packed bed filters. Currently, I charge about $300 to $400 for that, and that's the going rate. If you have to add in nitrogen reduction or phosphorus reduction, that's going to require a minimum 2 visits a year. So that operational cost is going to go up a little bit. Not double, but an operator may charge instead of $300, or $400, they may charge $500 or $600 to look at your site twice a year. Comes to nutrient reduction, if there's any chemical additions, for instance, the phosphorus, that will have to be maintained. And again, typically if you're changing out alum in 5-gallon buckets, you're looking at probably an annual cost just for the alum itself is about $100 that you're going to have to add on to that system. And then any kind of compliance sampling requirements or operational, if an operator's trying to keep in, dial in that chemistry and so forth to make sure we're optimizing the treatment. there will be some analytical costs on that. Analytical costs can range anywhere depending on what we're looking for. Simple organic test is about $30. With some of the other parameters, sometimes we're looking at probably about $100 worth of sampling, laboratory results for that. So there is added cost. They do a great job of treatment, but they do have to be maintained, and they do involve some capital costs, and most importantly, long-term maintenance costs will be associated with that particular type of system. So, any other questions or? Yeah.
So, I hear what you're saying, but I'm kind of not buying into it, because I kind of feel like I'm just hearing a narrative to scare people to thinking that the step system is just a much cheaper option. So I kind of wonder, how come if what you're putting out there, since Michigan doesn't have a centralized and uniform sanitation code,
Yep.
how come the Central Michigan District Health Department has adopted all of the current guidelines set forth by the state of Michigan, and like myself and many others, have allowed us to put in standard centralized, if you will, septic systems on our property within the last 12 to 18 months, with none of this knowledge out there? It doesn't make any sense to me.
So in order for you to put in a conventional system, your site went through a site characterization review,
3
evaluation.
times.
And so based on that evaluation, they came up with a prescriptive design, septic tank, field size, based on the flow in your soil type.
Yep.
So that is permitted. It met sanitary code requirements.
So you're right. So why do I need your system or the GLUA system if I met all the requirements? You just said it.
So in a conventional drain field situation, we do a great job of removing the organics. We do a pretty good job of removing pathogens too. But the court, and again, a little contradiction here. People think that if we got a coarse sand or gravel, that's great for a septic system. It's actually the worst thing we do for a septic system.
Not according to the state of Michigan, because
They will allow that. So for instance, in Benzie-Leelanau County, for example. So if you have a system that does not meet conventional standards, meaning you don't have 4-foot isolation and there are other criteria and so forth, if you have that, you can place that in there. And if you look at their regulations, if you have a coarse sand to gravel, you can load that at about, I think it's about 0.8 gallons per square foot. But if you don't meet that isolation distance and so forth, so what's gonna happen in that situation organically, we're gonna be able to take, hydraulically, you're never gonna know there's an issue with your system. So it's gonna treat the organics, you're gonna get good pathogen reduction, but the nutrient loading is actually going out. So in that type of a soil, we're not gonna get good nutrient loading. In fact, we could even compromise some of the pathogen reduction because that water goes through that coarse sand too quick. You don't have contact time with the bacteria like I was talking about on the first page. So there is contradictions with our own regulations. So in Benzie-Leelanau, if you don't meet all their site characteristics, which in a lot of cases you could, and you could load it up environmentally, it's not the best thing. But if you don't, then they're gonna require, if you're within 500 feet of that water body, then you have to put in some kind of a phosphorus and nitrogen reduction thing. So, I'm 500 feet away, I gotta do that. Yet, if I'm in that soil that really doesn't do a whole lot for nutrient loading, I'm allowed to do that. So there is a contradiction. So I fully understand what you're
Well, it's
coming
a
from.
Ponzi scheme.
What's that?
It's a Ponzi scheme. Central
No.
Michigan District Health Department
Oh,
permitted thousands of people, including myself, saying we met the necessary guidelines, and then you turn around 18 months later and say, you don't meet the guidelines, so now you have to replace your entire system. What kind of world do I live in when, if I ran a company like that, I have a brother who went to prison for 10 years for a Ponzi scheme out west. This is a Ponzi scheme. Don't tell me, because if I wanted to, if I would have done 18 months ago, I would have put in a self-contained tank, pumped it as needed, never had to deal with the GLUA or any of this, but yet I was never informed by the Central Michigan District Health Department, and I have a good authority. Even last week, they're still permitting traditional septic tanks. With this on the table, not informing citizens.
I got something to say about that. I had talked to the health department exactly what you're talking about. If we're looking at a system like this, why can't you direct the people to this direction?
Right.
And he says, our rules are, I have to do exactly what is required until there's an official new rule. He can't work in the gray area. That's what he said.
Well, under state law, PA 188 may allow you to assess us. However, and I've reminded everyone online, it does not give you the authority to condemn a perfectly functioning system unless you put life, limb, or property in imminent danger or you didn't follow the rules. And I have contracts with the state of Michigan that says I followed the rules like many others. And I don't know how you're gonna get around that.
Good point. Good point.
I just want to, this is wrong for me to say this. I know it's wrong. But I have a septic. Do people have contracts with who? Do you have a contract with on your septic?
It's an implied and express
It's an
contract.
implied, it's not a
No,
written.
It's an express contract
Okay,
because
it's an implied.
I signed
Okay.
a contract with them that I followed their guidelines, and they signed off on it, therefore it's an express. The implied contract means that during the lifetime of my septic, I will follow the rules and maintain that septic in proper functioning order during the implied contract duration period of time, which I will. That's what Michigan law is, that's what I did. So,
Yeah, so you're the operator of your own system? right
Huh?
now. You're the operator of your own system right now, so.
well, under
Yeah.
Michigan guidelines.
Yeah. So
I
you
follow
got,
the rules.
just heads up, just properly maintain it, you'll be good. So, but that is a challenge that we have in Michigan, is we don't have a statewide code, and everything is, you have 43 health jurisdictions, 83 something counties, and you design one setting on one side of the border, and it's different from the other, so. But for the most part, most of them have what I mentioned, that isolation distance, that vertical. There are state and county guidelines regarding all that, so, you know, they do the best that they can to protect the public health and whatever. Any other questions?
Ron, thank you. Thank you. Ron, will you stick around after the meeting? Good. Ron will stick around after the meeting so the residents can talk to him, ask him further questions. We're at a time now of public comment. Does anybody have a public comment? Rick, come on up, buddy.
Rick Shoemaker, resident of Gary Township. First, I want to ask about the public hearing that you're going to have, where you're soliciting public comments. Is it on the preliminary engineering plan that's listed, that's on the Lyon Township website right now?
It's on the application it's on the application to apply for clean water SRS. It's an application.
Okay, but what are we commented on? The preliminary engineering report, or that has been out there for, several years? I mean, there's a lot of information in there that is wrong.
Yeah.
I can answer that. The preliminary engineering report has been modified, and that is the plan. And the plan, the notice in the paper is that there's gonna be a meeting,
Right,
public meeting on the plan.
yes.
That's gonna go along with the application to the Clean Water Fund,
Understand.
so that we can try to get some money.
And you're asking the public to comment on that,
On the plan.
on the plan.
The draft, it's a draft.
So the preliminary engineering report has been modified, changed.
It is a draft, and that plan, I believe, will be available the 21st of April at
Okay.
both townships.
On Lyon Township website,
No, the document will be in both townships. for you to cover.
a physical document then. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to go back, I know this planning process has been going on for several years, and you're a long ways into this, but I want to go back to the public meeting that you had in October of 2019. The two townships had, Lyon and Garish had a meeting at the fire department hall, fire hall.
Sure.
And in that meeting, a presentation was made, a PowerPoint slide presentation was made by your engineers.
Lisa
Lisa
Van-
Vanderbeek.
That's correct.
And they went through all the various information on what was proposed and so forth. And at the end of that presentation, there's a slide, and this slide program is on your Lyon Township website. All this information is available. And at the end, it talks about the next steps that will be taken by the township. And one of the steps, one of the bullet points, it says, and I will read it, there will be several opportunities, and the word several is underlined, several opportunities for the townships and the public to determine whether to proceed throughout the process.
Yes.
Now, you have never, as far as I know, given the opportunity for the public to decide whether to proceed. You've given plenty of opportunity for the public to comment and ask questions. My question to you is, are you going to live up to this promise to let the public decide whether to proceed?
That's forthcoming in the process. That is
When?
forthcoming.
When is the public going to be able to decide?
I got a question to ask, because it's part of this.
I'm asking the questions
No.
here.
How much is it gonna cost, and how much money are we gonna get from our government? We don't know that. When we do know that, we'll be able to say, hey, here's the actual plan, here's the actual money, here's everything. You know, it takes a long time to do this, and we've been working very hard to try to do it, and we don't have the answers day one back at the fire department, and we don't have all the answers today. But when we do, we'll be able to present it, here's how much it is, here's what it's gonna cost, and we'll all get to go to what you're talking about.
When do you expect to have any decisions based upon funding?
I don't think we'll get the decisions on money till November.
I
Okay.
think he deserves a yes or no answer to his original question.
Yeah.
Are you going to give the public the opportunity?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Simple answer.
Yes.
Okay, and it's gonna be at some point when you have more information on
When we
funding
have
sources.
complete information, but as much as we know,
Okay.
especially about the grant funding.
Okay, because it says there will be several opportunities throughout the process, and that's one opportunity. I'm wondering if there's gonna be another opportunity.
No, there'll be an opportunity for residents to voice their support or opposition to the project.
Well, support and opposition is different than deciding whether to proceed, Dave. Deciding whether to proceed is a clear idea of whether or not the public wants to support this project and to continue proceeding with it. Objecting to it is one thing, but deciding whether to proceed is another.
Okay.
So you're saying that at some point, the public, and I'm not sure who the public is gonna be. Is it gonna be me that doesn't live within the sewer service area? Or is it just those within the proposed special
Just
district?
those within the services, those within the service.
Within
area.
the SAD?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so people that live in the township that aren't within the proposed special assessment district won't have any say in the matter at all?
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Well, we can comment on the proposal, at the public hearing.
I suppose anyone from the public can come in and comment on
Yeah?
it. Sure,
All right.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Yes, sir. Come on up.
I don't need to come up front, I can speak from back.
No, I want you to come up front. Come on up.
Okay,
Yeah,
pretty simple, I just got a couple things.
that's right.
You made a
Pardon
statement.
me, sir. Your name, sir?
Rick Federal,
Rick.
you made a statement that you all are working to secure funding.
Yes.
You made a statement that you've contacted 11 legislators. Did you do this personally? Individually?
Mostly Zoom calls.
No, did you do it as a group? How did you do that?
We're working through lobbyists that are working through us down in Lansing.
And what
On our
lobbyists
behalf.
what lobbyists would you be using?
Oh, I can give you their names after me. I don't know them off the
You
top of
don't
my head.
know your lobbyist name?
Excuse me, I'll give you the names after the meeting, Rick. Come on.
Well, this is public comment. I'm sure these people would like to know who you're using for lobbyists.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll put it out in the GLUA website today.
Okay, that'll help. Now, another question in regards to that. Since you're using lobbyists, you claim that you're all doing your part. What would that be? If you haven't visited these people in particular, you made it sound like we've got a commitment that we want to help you. I know for a fact, none of these politicians have committed to help you. Personally. I know that. So, I'd like to ask this question about Public Act 188 real quick. And in regards to you, Mr. Hall, you've been educated on 188, correct?
Little bit.
Did you do that downstate?
What do you mean, did I do what downstairs?
Did you attend any classes of any type?
No,
to get
sir.
Really? Because I was told that you attended a class at Michigan State University and was thoroughly educated on 188. And if so, I'd like to know who instructed that class.
I took a course at Michigan State MSU Extensions on inland lakes. And one of their units that they talked about public improvements and the tools that are available to townships for those public improvements.
And who taught the
And one
class?
of those, there were several doctors from Michigan State that taught the class.
Okay.
And one of those tools that they said to be used was Public Act 188.
Very well. Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Rick, if you'll stop and see me afterwards, I'll get
I
you that
really don't have
information.
time, Dave.
That's all right,
I've got to
thanks.
go to Lansing.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Dave Knifick, and I am a sales engineer of thermoplastic plumbing systems, which include pressure, DWV, and also sewer. And February of this month, February the 7th, you had a guest speaker, Mr. Monroe, which fantastic. This is packets of information that will support what I'm going to present to you. One of the pieces of information that's in it is actually a report or a study that was done by North Dakota University regarding septic systems. The situation we've got with a step system is every time you make an adjustment, you create another problem. And septic systems do have the capability of freezing. Okay. Now, a normal septic system, and I don't want to pick on you, Ron, but you don't like to have them freeze because the bacteria that's in it, you actually hurt that bacteria. The problem with the step system goes much further than that, and that is this 2-inch piece of pipe that is pressurized to about 70 psi. Okay, comes out of your tank, usually at about 6 inches, 90s down directly. The step system, the tank can freeze in 2 different areas, 2 different ways. One is, of course, the frost line. The other is you have a vent stack that's in your house that comes out of the top of your house. And that allows cold air to go straight down into your tank, straight run. And since we have a majority of non-permanent residents, a lot of them take off and leave for months at a time, and they turn their heat off. And that stack is inside your house. Your house is cooling off to -20 if that's what the temperature is. And that -20 is going right down into your tank. And you have a freezing occurrence that takes place on this pipe. Okay? And when that freezing occurrence takes place, and it doesn't matter if it's PVC or polyethylene, you have the chance of cracking or busting this pipe. Ms. Monroe, during the February 7th meeting, even indicated they had a couple failures of this pipe coming out of the tank. He assessed it was due to the settling of the ground using a piece of styrofoam. This pipe has the tensile strength of 924 pounds before it will bend and break. 42 inches of soil, 12 by 12, keep in mind this only comes out about 6 to 8 inches, adds up to 280 pounds. Tensile strength of 2-inch foam is 34 pounds. You said it cracked, which is correct. The reason why it cracked is on the pipe and it bent and cracked.
The speaker you're on is,
No, yeah.
they're good.
So the problem I've got is a step system. And there's things you can do to change. You can heat the tanks, you can put aerators in them to make it go. But the problem is when those people that leave for the winter, they turn their circuit breakers off. Those people that come up every other week, turn their heat down. Now, that step system or septic tank can freeze even though you have your heat on in your house. Because that vent pipe can be on the exterior side of your house, outside. Very little insulation. And when you turn your heat down, you've got cold air going down into that tank. And that's the problem I've got with the step system. I don't have a problem with having a sanitary system or management. But like you indicated, Dave, dealing with the systems that we currently have, some of them are failing and some of them already have. We can't see. The pipe is 42 inches underground or further. You can't see it. I would almost guarantee you go around Berry County, you will find where there are failed pipes. The only way you can do it is dig them up. And there's a lot of additional support in there. There's diagrams, like I say, so, you know, read through it. There's other issues also, safety of the tanks. Concerns me to have 8,540 lids around this lake that can come loose. In fact, Miss Monroe said a couple screws and you take them off. The ground freezes, it puts pressure on your risers of your tanks. If the tank's sitting there in a low area, which he indicated, we should have it in a low area in case it backs up so it doesn't go into the house. Water will accumulate. It'll get underneath your lids. I had a son that went out, took a bunch of fireworks, shoved them underneath a log with his buddies, lit it, and you want to know what happened. They also will want to open up those lids if it's a couple screws. They actually manufacture kid catchers for kids that fall into those tanks. You're talking almost an 8-foot drop to the bottom of that tank if you go through that lid. I don't want to lose one kid. We lose 50 of them annually. There's a lot of those on the very last page. Go look at them on the internet.
When was this done in North Dakota?
North Dakota
No, when?
University.
No, when was it done? What's the date of the study?
I would have to look that up for you.
Okay, all right,
Okay, there's cross line maps and et cetera in there also.
okay.
Like I said, I am not pro for the step system whatsoever.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your
And like I
comments.
say, there's a lot of information there in addition to that. Read through it. And, you know, like to hear your responses on it.
Can I, did you have that other one for our 7th member who's not
I've
here?
got a whole box of them.
Okay,
I'll give
could I
you
have
one.
one for him,
Yeah,
please?
not a problem.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Here, let me give you
Scott,
this one.
Ian?
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Scott? Ian? Yeah, I'm going to scan this and send it to you. Would you be ready to comment on it at the next public meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. All right. Good. Anyone else at this time? Yes, sir, in the back. Come on up.
This
This gentleman here's been
Oh, I'm
having his
sorry.
hand up.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry, you have to wait. This guy was up first.
I'm blocking that.
Am I invisible?
I couldn't see him. Yes, sir. Your name, sir?
Bill Briscoe.
Hey, Bill.
We own some property over on Higgins Lake, it's
Sure.
lakefront property.
Sure.
We came here to try and understand exactly what's going on. We hear both sides of the story, and I guess some of the takeaways for me today, and I want to make sure I understand it properly. If you drop the assessment against the undeveloped property,
Okay.
does that proportionally increase against the developed property?
Yes.
Okay? If you run your sewer pipe across undeveloped property, and I've heard an improvement as much as 25%, will that result in an increase in the property taxes?
Well, I'm not an assessor, so I can't answer that.
That's a good question.
Good question.
Yeah,
Well, it's been answered before, that yes, probably,
yeah, yeah.
at meetings.
I also heard today that if a certain amount of this cost isn't covered by grant or government funding, that you wouldn't go forward, or probably wouldn't go forward with it. Is there any formal position from the board that if you don't at least cover half, that you'll abandon the project?
We haven't determined that.
Do you think that would be helpful for the people that are objecting to it based on cost.
I do. I think that that's gonna be a determining factor in the end. That will be the decision maker. You know, where is that threshold?
In relation to that, if you don't know the threshold, will you set a meeting to vote on the proposal itself?
Well, if we're in Public Act 188, everyone will have, every property owner of both townships will receive a letter detailing all of the aspects of the project, the total cost, the amount of grant funding, how that translates into individual assessments on properties.
Will they also be instructed how to file proper objections?
Yes.
That is, with every member of the
Yes.
board, not just one.
That's correct.
Okay, you're talking about redistricting. Will that take, well, there was some discussion here about redrawing the map.
That's under consideration, yes.
If you redraw the map and some property is eliminated, does that again proportionally increase the burden on the properties that are left?
Well, it could, but we have to take out the cost that would be associated with the properties that are being removed. So we don't know. That's a balancing act. We haven't explored that.
And that's based a lot on input we've received as far as who thinks they should be in, who doesn't believe they should.
We've had several people come into the township to talk to me about why are they in, why are they out? And really, it was the initiation of people coming in and talking to us personally is why we, really dug into it and asked the questions of ourselves several times about that.
Thank you for answering the question.
You bet. You bet. Okay, gentlemen in the back now.
Yeah, my name's Jason Trouts, resident of Lyon Township. And I just want to thank all of you for the very hard work that you're putting in here.
Thank you.
It's a thankless job. It takes a tremendous amount of effort, perseverance, something that many people would not ever want to have placed upon their shoulders. However, and I think a lot of people, probably the majority of people, thank you for your efforts and all the time and all the harassment that some of you are getting from the thugs that are attempting to misinform the public about what's really going on. We haven't had a decision. We don't know what the price is going to be. Persevere. Continue doing your job. It's not a nice job. It's not a popular job. It's one that I'm not even sure I'm going to support because I don't have the facts yet. But you're to be commended. Don't bail out on us. Don't look the other way. Continue to try to put forward factual information as much as you can. I appreciate the experts coming forward, trying to educate us. I really appreciate it. And I think the majority of people, if they're honest, do appreciate it. I'm hopeful that someday I'll have cleaner drinking water. That's my goal. Multiple generations living here in this community, I'm hoping for better drinking water. Thank you. Keep up the fight.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I would like to say that.
Your name, ma'am?
Gail Johnson.
Hi, Gail.
Hi. So if he's correct in that more people want this and the rest of us are thugs, that's a problem. And the problems have been with the people who can really afford this, lakefronters, and they can't relate to what it is to just be an average Joe. They can't, apparently. If the Houghton Lake they did some kind of little thing in their paper, and 900 people are, the amount of people against this, and your petitions show this, the people against this far outnumber the people for it. And the problem with 188, which you're relying on, is very unfair to those people because it's unfair that if the vote goes by acreage, but the cost goes to parcel, that's seriously wrong. A person who has 100 acres has 100 votes more than a person who has an acre. So I have a question, Dave. How much do you really know about PA 188, except for that you can force this through? You can force this through on the backs of a lot of people who can't afford it to serve the people who can afford it. I think we need to look at options. And the idea that an email was FOIA'd that talks about we better rush this through because our opposition is going to be ahead of us. I feel like the trust started out being questioned, and now we know we're just numbers. We know that. We're just cash. And some of us, it is problem. We need to replace our windows and our roof. But no, we need to have a sewer instead. That's my comment.
Well, thank you, Gail. I saw another hand go up there. Yes. Tim, come on up.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Tim.
I'll try not to get thugged.
I'm sorry.
You see how spirited the debate is on both sides. That's the problem.
Really?
It's,
We'd have never known.
there's a lot of name calling involved in all this that I don't need to be part of. But I have a couple of quick questions. F&V has been the engineer from the beginning through the feasibility study. Have you got them under contract to do the actual engineering if you move forward?
No.
The actual design engineering?
No. We've not signed anything.
Sorry, I'm not a loud speaker. I just asked if F&V was under contract to do the actual engineering, the design engineering of the project, if it decides to move forward. Has the board discussed putting that out for bid? If you get to that spot,
No.
where you actually have to have the engineering,
Not yet.
actual design, the step system, or whatever system you end up with?
Not yet.
I had the same question about whether there's a minimum amount that the board would be looking for before they would move forward. And if there is a minimum amount, is there an expectation that in future years you'll be able to apply for other grants to cover more of the cost? Or is it just, is there a threshold we get to 50%, we're gonna move forward, propose to the townships that they move forward?
I think we need.
With
to
an
do that.
expectation of future grants? I mean, it's a yearly grant cycle.
Oh, yeah.
so,
You know,
Apply for grants every year
um,
as they're available. Yeah.
I have a specific question. With the sheer number of people that have signed petitions in objection to you moving forward without a referendum, we'll call it a referendum, are you still up here saying, yeah, we want to move forward? We want to disregard that there's hundreds of people that have signed objections that want to stop the process right now?
I guess my point, or my position would be, I want to get a number, a better feel for the number as far as what kind of monies we could reasonably expect to get. And then listen to people's, where are they going to weigh in? Because I think that's going to be the determining factor, is the number of dollars we're able to get is going to make people's minds up. I mean, because I think there's a group here that's going to say yes to anything. I think there's a group here that's going to say no to anything. And then I think in the big middle, that's where people are, and they need to know. They need to know, do we go forward because everything comes with a price, and that's going to be a determinant.
Can you understand how when you FOIA an email that says what I just said it says, how we can trust you?
I have
How
a-
can we
I- I
trust
have-
you?
I have a comment about that when it's our turn.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
I asked in the past about Zoom meetings, and some of the FOIA stuff we got had a laundry list of people that were allowed to come in via Zoom and participate. But when we asked if this meeting could be Zoomed, so that people that can't make these morning meetings could at least participate, and maybe just a call-in Zoom meeting, maybe not, you know, where you see 100 faces on the screen, but at least to be able to call in and listen to the conversation and the debate back and forth and your comments. It's got to be doable. I've been, I don't know how many township meetings where I've had, you know, 20 or 30 people sitting on a phone call, listening to the debate and then being allowed public comment at the end of it. I gotta believe you have the technology to do that. I appreciate that, you know, you tape everything and it shows up, but that's a day late and a dollar short kind of a thing. And a lot of people don't wanna sit down and watch a video. It's hard to sit and watch a video like that where you're not participating and you don't get allowed a chance to comment. So I just think you ought to at least try to do that and open up the meeting to at least phone calls where people can participate somehow. I'm wondering if GLUA actually has the legal authority to contract with people in, or entities in Beaver Creek Township. Your authority is in Garish and Lyon, that's where you got your authority.
Correct.
Do you have any authority to contract outside of those townships?
We invited Beaver Creek to come in and weigh it many years ago, several years ago,
and I
when we
thought there was
started the
a
conversation, and they just had no interest at all.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any authority to work outside of the two townships that you've been formed under.
That's a good question.
I don't think you do, but you can check with your own attorney. Roger's a good attorney, so. The gentleman, when he made his presentation, sort of a flippant kind of a thing out on the side was, if you're within 500 feet, you're required, of a body of water, you're required to do something. And yet, there's homeowners, I'm a mile away, there's homeowners a mile and a half away from this lake that are part of this boundary. And they've commented over and over again, they've signed objections, for whatever reason. They've signed the objection sheets, and I think they really need to be heard at some point. And then I've asked several times about, is there a commercial list that you're working off of? What does a commercial entity pay in these townships? What's their REU value?
Oh,
Is
you
there
mean-
one?
For commercial property.
Yeah, is there one? Is there one you're working off of that Fleece Vandenbrink has said, this is what we would recommend? Because I found one in Leelanau that I look at, that I think actually came from Fleece Vandenbrink. And I just wonder if that's floating around.
Was it
I
from
haven't
Oakland?
heard any kind
Was
of a
that the one from
discussion.
Oakland County?
No, there is one from Oakland,
Yeah.
it's separate from the Leelanau one, and I think
Okay.
a more rural one would be appropriate. But I wonder, have you got that in your hands? Have you debated that? I haven't heard any public debate about it. I haven't seen a copy of it. I've asked several times
Well, we know.
whether you're working off of something.
Well, we know that there are several systems similar to this in the
Yes.
state, you know, I suppose we could ask them for.
Well, I just think it's something, if
We
you're
haven't
working
gotten
on,
there yet.
if you're working on how much people are gonna pay,
Yeah.
and one of the main things would be if I owned a restaurant that had 160 seats in it, I look at the Leelanau one and they're up for a $160,000 bill. If that's the system you're working off, then they would probably want to know that.
You say you did get one from
Leelanau.
Leelanau County?
Yeah, and I think it was actually generated by the engineering firm you're using. So that's all I have.
Yeah,
All right,
thank
thanks.
you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come on up. Yes, sir. From the front row.
Right, Kevin Pelkey, this is actually my first meeting.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions and a comment about what the gentleman said about the treatment systems. That sand is one of the worst for a septic. I don't know if I buy that, because I've been involved with Rotary for 25 years. We do biosand filters all over the world to convert contaminated water, which is mostly sewage water, into drinking water in many countries all around the world. Second, I would like to know the line that was drawn for this to happen. The information, the study that was done on that. Where could I get my hands on that?
You mean the map? The map of the SAD, yeah, I've got.
The watershed.
Sure.
The whole.
It's on both townships' website too.
There's a copy of it right out.
And there's a copy out here.
This is my first meeting.
No, that's fine.
We've had a place up here for 26 years, and
Sure.
that's, we stayed home because we're weekenders too for now. But we put our system in planning to retire here full-time, so when we did, we put it in larger than we needed. But I'm a little surprised too that they said there's no test. I mean, I know the state allows, that's when you do a perk test, right? To make sure your property perks so that everything works like it's supposed to.
They don't perk anymore.
They don't perk anymore? Is that what he said?
That's what he said.
That's what I said, I'm not sure.
Well, it's,
I don't think that's correct, but
yeah.
I don't know that
either.
either.
Because
I'm not for
if
sure.
it's not valuable soil to do a septic, they're sure not gonna let you put one in. I mean, that's what the health department does, right? But anyway, okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Comment, but I have a problem standing because I got a bad back right now.
Sure, go ahead.
So, I'm just curious.
Your name, sir?
Oh, Timothy Monet.
Okay, Tim, welcome.
I'm just curious if going forward, and I've already spoken to Julie about this, is GLUA and Julie, are you guys prepared to defend this when it happens, because you're gonna push it through to Michigan Tax Tribunal, which I have paperwork for everyone. The assessment you're gonna call it, because in 1986, the Michigan Supreme Court upheld that a blanket assessment is not acceptable in the state courts. Therefore, Dave, you said at the high school that everyone must be assessed equally. Now you're backtracking, saying that vacant lots won't have this is, and I kind of wonder, like, the way this has been rolled out, aren't you all a little embarrassed that you spent all this time putting together a resolution, you chair this committee, Dave, and then you turn around and change hats as Garris Township Supervisor and reject all your own findings for various reasons? And I'm just kind of wondering, what is really going on? It's like nobody knows what they're doing. And now you're going to push people out of the SAD because they object. And we all know it. Nobody wants to say it. I'm going to say it. So I think I'd just be a little embarrassed if I ran a company the way you guys are putting this out there, backtracking and saying one thing. And as I reminded Julie, I cannot a mind reader. I can only go by what is given to me. And that comes from all of you.
Thank you, Tim.
Well said.
Anyone else? Before we go, yeah, Sam, come on up, buddy.
I don't know if I'm your buddy.
You're always my buddy. Sam, we can disagree on things, but we're still friends. You even told me that one time in the parking lot. We can disagree on things, but we're still friends.
Well, that may be true, but some of these gentlemen here and ladies are saying otherwise about what's promised and what is being said. And when you raise your hand and take an oath as an official, you're supposed to make decisions on the best of your ability on behalf of the constituents that vote you in office. Right. And I'm old school on that. I'm going to hold everybody accountable to that as I have with the current Lyon Township and the previous. But aside from that, Mr. Shoemaker.
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is a time of public comment. You make your comments to the board, please.
Okay, I'm going to do it this way so you can hear me and they can hear me.
Well, I don't want you to address anybody.
On behalf of the customer that asked you about if you're going to make a decision yes or no, or a vote yes or no, I want to clear that up. There will be a vote on this eventually.
There will be, you will vote by petition.
What?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, that's what I'm telling
Let me
you.
finish what I have to say first.
Yes,
You
go
will,
ahead.
we will have a vote
Okay.
at an election on this matter. Period. You have already forgotten about 233. And if you haven't done your homework, read it. We're going to still keep pushing 188. But 233 says otherwise. And that means all registered voters in your township can vote. Now, what you said earlier was also true. In the districts, you only have the people in the districts that can have a voice on this matter, be it a summer resident like Kevin or myself being a full-time resident. But the other one is a vote by the constituents that are registered voters. Now, it's no secret what happened last week at the commissioner's office that I submitted a recall, and the language so far has been approved. And there's reasons for that. And there's gonna be people here looking at trying to get seats here in Garrish Township on the same thing. All we wanted was a voice in the beginning, so we could chat in the beginning, and you wouldn't have all this nonsense. That's all there is to it. But now, because it's not being done, you forced our hand, as the young lady there taking notes from the paper asked me, and I quoted, and I'm going to quote something to you. When I had you over at my house and you talked to me for an hour about the sewer, I listened tentatively. I asked only one question. Would we have a vote on this matter? And you said yes. And then at the township board meeting, Eric Carlson, he said yes to the same question when it was brought up. So now that meant that you both said yes, that we will have a vote. So I end that subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And the voting, I think, should include the people who
Yes,
are
ma'am.
paid.
Yes, sir, in the back. Come on
In
up.
all due respect, sir, to you made the statement that we need to know how much everything's gonna cost before we can actually throw it out to the public for a vote, right? Well, I work with legislators, and I'm telling you up front, I have been told no grant money is going to be issued to any organization without the majority of the constituents' approval, period. Rest my case.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, we'll have some board comments at this time. Lisa?
I have none.
None.
None?
None.
Bill? Dave?
I have to say something. The GLUA board, us folks sitting here, are citizens just like you. The townships asked us if we would be on a board for a potential sewer system.
They asked you? Excuse me?
Yes?
We have a proposal for a septic alternative to what we have. I think we all know that we have a situation where we have holes for septics at some places and drums with holes in them. I think we've had a lot of reports that have shown us the degradation to the lake. We have reports from the health department of drinking wells that are contaminated with nitrates that come from septics,
And people peeing in the water.
affluent. Yeah, I read a thing that 95% of urine is water. I suppose if you've had 12 beers, I don't know what that percentage is at that point, but that's irrelevant.
It's a bunch of people, though.
This is really, really a great system for us. And I know that people want to talk about a vote and a vote and a vote. And all of that takes, I think, our eye off what we have here as our environment and what is health and safety for our citizens. And I believe that the townships have a right for health and safety for its citizens.
You're talking about problems.
Excuse me, pardon me, ma'am, it's our turn. Thank you.
The SEF system is one that would be an authority responsibility. Your current septics on site are owner responsibility. Owner responsibility is you pay for that. The STEP system, we have, the utility pays for. I've read a lot of situations where people, I don't think, understand the benefits of the STEP system. All the work will be provided. The tank is by the authority. You have a problem with your system, you pick up a phone, someone comes and fixes it, whether it's a light or a pump or whatever. We get rid of all of the problems that we've had with the holes in the ground and the drums and everything else. I called it amnesty. We kind of get rid of that. I think that this is really an important thing for us to do. And it's not so much about whether we get to vote or not. It's about what's the right thing to do. And I guess there's people who feel as though we don't have a problem. Our septics aren't leaking out into the groundwater. We argue about whether the sand is good or not good. The sand is coarse sand. It's saturated with sand. It has no binding properties. We've heard it from Scott Monroe from the step system. We heard it today from Ron today about how the effluent just goes out there into the groundwater, and it's affecting us. I go around and talk to people about the step system. Dave, you know anything about the sewer? Oh, I know a little bit. What do you want to know? And they talk to me about the sewer, and I talk to them about the sewer, and when we're done talking, they say, you know what? God, I think we ought to have this thing. They weren't thinking that before. I don't know where they got all of their information on why this is such a bad thing. And I'll tell you, one of the things that gets me as a human being and a person, I read the comments and I hear people in here that say disparaging things about me and about this board, and I don't even know you folks. You don't even know me. You take something somehow and then turn it towards us as a human being. That's a problem, and I don't like it, and nobody likes it here. We're trying to do a good job. We need help of everybody. This is a good system for us. It's a good thing for us. It gets us out of the problems we have. It cleans us up. It's health and safety. It's a good thing for us to do. Not everyone will agree. I get it. Not everyone will agree.
Can I have a rebuttal? Probably not. Good. Okay.
We thank everybody who comes here and talks to us. We hear comments that we don't listen. You guys are going to just ram this through. That is not the case. We listen, we care about everybody. Sometimes the emotions run pretty hard and pretty thick. And I think at this point, I'm just going to say thank you very much for coming. We appreciate everybody's input. And we wish everyone would get on the bus and help this as a community put something together that we all should do, which is a sewer around this lake. There was a gentleman who put a letter in the paper last week, I think, or the week before, and said, oh, by the way, take a look at Silver Lake. Now, if we looked at Silver Lake, we can see that Silver Lake wanted to put a step system around their lake. A grassroots effort came up. They decided to make a vote on it. It went down in flames. Even though the government gave them 21 of their $28 million, they said no. Today, that lake is an algae bloom and they don't swim in it. And it happens over and over again in lakes in northern Michigan. And here we are. We want to protect our lake. We want to protect our health. And we've seen it happen before. Everybody wants to bring up articles. David Kniff, I respect you very much for your knowledge on the piping and all that stuff. We should have you on the bus because we need you. Rick Shoemaker, we need you on the bus. Tim O'Rourke, we need you on the bus. We need all of you on the bus because you all have knowledge and you all know what's right from wrong and we all can work together on this. But today we got the report that talked about children fall through septic covers. And this report that David showed us today has 4 or 5 pages of article after article how a 7-year-old fell into a hole. We have septics right now all over the place. Holes, those covers everywhere. It's tragic that things happen in our world. We certainly are not building something so a child falls into the tank. We're trying to build something for health and safety in our community and what we need to do to keep us for future generations to have the environment that we have here. That's why we're all here. So I just kind of plead out to folks, it's very emotional for everybody, that we need to be civil, we need to talk to people like friends and neighbors, and we need to work together on the solution that's the right solution, that we're not overburdened with financially or maintenance-wise. So today we had the gentleman come to talk about septics that have performance. The opposition has a website that says we want septics that have performance. We want to stop the nutrients coming out of our septics. And all that was done today was expensive, high maintenance, and took care of phosphorus and nitrogen, maybe. But what about the boron? What about the laundry detergent? What about the pharmaceutical drugs? What about the personal care products? Those are all going down. Those are emerging contaminants that our government and our scientists are discovering, and we need to take care of those. It's the smart thing to do. We should have done it a long time ago, and we didn't. I have one more thing to say. We all try to find something that we want to turn into something that's a smoking gun of some kind. I have two things to say. We heard earlier today about a FOIA'd email where one GLU member said, guys, you better get it together fast or the opposition will succeed. That comment was for us on this board to get off your butt and make some decisions. That's what that was about. I just wish we all could get together and get on the bus. We're a community here. Let's live together. Let's work together. Our common denominator, we love it here. We all love it here. When I see people out, you know how many people have called me at my house or even talked to me about the sewage system? 2. I'm an open book. I'd love to talk to each and every one of you.
Well, you blocked me on Facebook, so I can't really.
Okay, let me explain about that, because I saw that, Tim. Let me explain. We have a Facebook GLU page. We have made it so every comment is hidden. We didn't select yours and say, oh, you said something wrong. No one can comment on our site because we didn't want someone to go to our site and see a negative comment, and then someone innocently said, well, I read it on your site. Debate what we say on our site on another site. Politics and issues, slice of time or slice of life, whatever it is. Go to another one. And that's what's been happening.
You blocked, I did
Okay.
another thing, it's like sewer site, and
Now.
then you blocked me personally.
Now,
Is that-
no. We have not blocked anybody on our personal Facebook page. We just don't allow comments. All comments are hidden, so no one sees something that someone else wrote and thought it was a fact that we said. Please understand that. However, the sewer petition site, that is private, and you do block people, but we don't. We just don't let the comments go. So again, please, folks, let's get on the bus. This is a community effort. We love this lake, and let's do the right thing. And let's stop fighting each
You want
other.
us on the bus, give us a say-so.
Yeah, right, right.
You come to these meetings, you
All right.
have a say. Anyway, enough.
But
Thank you very
it doesn't
much.
go anywhere.
All right. Wait a minute, I'm not done. You don't want to hear what I have to say?
I'm done, no.
Okay.
You
well-
didn't wanna hear
well,
what I
No,
said.
I was going to comment about your comment. You made a comment to us about you're forcing this thing through. I want to comment specifically about that. Because if you'll recall back on the August, we had a October meeting at the high school. In the month of November, had we chose to do so, we could have gone into Public Act 188 in November, passed the resolution. We could have gone through the public hearing in November. It wouldn't have given anyone any time to sign any petitions anywhere. We could have done that. But what we said, we had 2 public meetings at the high school. We knew that there was a lot of information that had to get out to the public yet. And we knew that there were several, we wanted to create several meetings like this so people could come to us and speak at these meetings. I can't tell you the number of people since that October meeting that have come into my office to talk about this. And some of the modifications that we are going to be considering in the future came from people that came to speak to us personally, not to call us names, not to badmouth us on a website, but we have honestly tried to give everyone a forum to come in and talk to us. So if anyone wants to say that we're ramming it down your throat, we could have done that, but we chose not to. We chose to take the high ground, and you know what? It's not perfect, and it's not pretty all the time. So that's my comment. I make a motion that we will adjourn at 11:18. Is there a motion for that?
I make a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn 11:18. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.